Chapter 61 Obscure Revenge, please follow up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Okay, that's it for today. Man, all that talking makes my mouth dry. Hey, don't go spreading this around, got it? Not even to your folks. Uchiha Shien glanced at Uchiha Itachi. Why? Shisui asked, a little confused. The regular clan members are one thing, but those Sharingan users. Shisui, you know how they are. If word got out, their egos would be through the roof. It'd just stir up trouble, Gen Uchiha added, rolling his eyes. Shisui thought for a moment. Yeah, you're right. I forgot how some of the clan can be. Best to keep it under wraps. I won't tell Mom and Dad, Itachi promised seriously, his little face determined. Good, good. Alright, you two keep practicing. I gotta grab some water. I'll be back later. Uchiha Gen pushed himself up from the thick tree branch and was about to head out. Shien, hang on a sec. What's up, Shisui? Gen Uchiha asked, turning back, a hint of question in his voice. Could I borrow those historical materials? Shisui looked a little nervous, then, seeing a change in Shien's expression, quickly explained, it's not that I don't trust you or anything. I just want to read up on our clan's history myself. Uchiha Itachi's eyes lit up, looking at Shien with hopeful anticipation. Seeing this, Uchiha Gen's heart skipped a beat. He covered well though, putting on a light smile. Shisui, it's not that I don't want to lend them to you. First off, those materials technically belong to Orochimaru-san. I'm just borrowing them. Second, it's not like it's one book. It's tons of stuff. They'd barely fit in a decent-sized room. You know the ninja world isn't exactly big on recording history, so there aren't any official history books. The information I told you was pulled from all sorts of sources, and sometimes it was just me putting two and two together. How can I really lend you something like that? Thinking about the ninja world's lack of historical record, Uchiha Gen felt like complaining. What are they teaching in ninja schools these days? During the Konoha crush, they bring back the reincarnated Hashirama and Tobirama Senju, and Konoha's ANBU don't even recognize them. It's only been a few decades, and the Hokage statues on the mountain are massive. The 12 ninja of the Leaf barely knew anything about the Sannin, who did so much for Konoha. It's the same deal with Boruto's generation. The new generation knows nothing about the 12 ninjas' peers or predecessors. Outrageous. If he ever gets into a position of power, he's making history a required subject at the academy. How can people not understand the past? History is there for a reason. But I guess it makes sense. The more you read, the harder you are to brainwash. Keeping the people ignorant is an old trick. Hearing this, Shisui gave a sheepish grin. Sorry, I didn't really think it through. No biggie. You didn't know, right? It's just way too much to go through. Even I haven't finished reading it all. If I find anything else interesting, I'll be sure to let you know. Alright, see you tonight. With that, Uchiha Gen vanished in an instant. Shisui and Itachi started practicing again, but they were definitely distracted, still mulling over what they'd just heard. As the sun began to set, Shisui and Itachi went to invite Gen Uchiha to dinner. The three of them walked together through the clan territory. The regular clan members, and ninjas, greeted them. They then went to Uchiha Fugaku's house. Uchiha Fugaku and Uchiha Mikoto were waiting at the door to greet them. After some polite greetings, they went inside and ate dinner in the dining room. The family rules were strict. No talking at the table. They focused on eating. Shisui and Gen were not old enough to drink. If you don't drink, you eat very quickly. If you drink, some people can eat all afternoon or even all day. Uchiha Mikoto's cooking was great, and Uchiha Gen enjoyed the meal. After dinner, the three men went to the living room for tea. Itachi was too young to join them. He went to his room to make notes about Uchiha Gen's actions and words. Uchiha Mikoto, in black home clothes and bare feet, carried in a tray with tea. She knelt at the table and began pouring. The Uchiha clan generally wears dark clothing like black, gray, and blue, for both men and women. The Hyuga clan generally wears light clothing like white, also for both men and women. Lord Fugaku, what do you think about getting Setsuna-senpai out of Konoha prison? Uchiha Gen asked after taking his teacup. Uchiha Mikoto froze, but continued pouring the tea. Why do you ask? Fugaku asked calmly, despite his surprise. Lord Fugaku, you're new in your role, but you need to make your position more secure. With Setsuna-senpai's support. This kid, what a flimsy excuse. He doesn't like the two elders, so he wants his father-in-law to come out to share power. What a vengeful boy, but letting his father-in-law come out would help him stabilize his position as the clan leader. This thing can work. Of course I want him out, but it won't be easy. Konoha village has two prisons, the police department's prison and the interrogation department's prison. The prisons of the police department mainly hold ninjas and civilians who violate Konoha's order, while the prisons of the torture department hold serious criminals. Uchiha Setsuna tried to get the Uchiha to seize power. To the top brass, that was rebellion. He was arrested by ANBU members and imprisoned in the torture department prison. Naturally, they cannot be imprisoned in the police department's prison. Otherwise, apart from not being free, it will probably be no different from a vacation. It's not easy now, but it will be when the new Hokage takes over. Setsuna-senpai was arrested nearly 20 years ago. He served his time. Why be so harsh? We, the Uchiha, made a lot of contributions during the Third Ninja War, but the higher-ups gave us nothing. When the new Hokage takes over, the clan leader can get someone to meet with the Hokage and talk about the efforts and achievements of the Uchiha clan. Lower your profile and speak softly to the new Hokage, and then show your loyalty, and things will most likely work out. Shursui, Mikoto-san, what do you think? Shursui said, a very good strategy. Uchiha Mikoto said with a smile, it can be done. Shien, thank you for considering my father and Fugaku. This is what it should be. Uchiha Shien said, ****. If Uchiha Setsuna is released from prison, the power of the two elders and Uchiha Fugaku will also be divided. ****, who says that a father-in-law will definitely support his son-in-law. ****, he may support small things, but not big things. ****, the Sharingan users of the Uchiha clan are usually paranoid and extremely stubborn and difficult to change. Uchiha Setsuna inherited Uchiha Madara's will. Can 20 years of prison completely smooth him out? He may be able to smooth out some of it, but it is basically impossible to smooth it all away. It is difficult to completely change a person's nature. Even if they change, they have been severely beaten by society and have softened. Once the situation changes and coupled with the instigation of hawks, their true nature will inevitably revive. Moreover, if Uchiha Setsuna wants to have power and status, he must stick to the character he established before, whether he likes it or not. Otherwise, without the support of the hawks, he is just an old man who has been imprisoned for nearly 20 years. This is his revenge on the two elders who ruined his good deeds and Fugaku who compromised on his promise. Chapter 62 Damn Fate, please read. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With Setsuna Uchiha's age, credentials, reputation, influence, and status as the clan leader's father-in-law, he'd be a shoo-in for Great Elder the moment he got out of prison. The other two elders would have to take a back seat. Having more elders above them would inevitably dilute their power, and if Fugaku thought he could control things, he'd find Setsuna a tough nut to crack, which would also weaken his authority. Gen got this idea from his earlier conversation with Shursui and Itachi about the Uchiha situation. He wasn't sure if Fugaku saw all the implications of releasing Setsuna, but even if he did, it wouldn't matter. Fugaku, being a clan leader in his prime, was brimming with confidence. Right now, Fugaku probably believed his father-in-law would back him completely, and he could handle him no matter what. Plus, Gen had intentionally brought this up in front of Mikoto, both to get in her good graces and to apply subtle pressure on Fugaku. If Fugaku refused to help his father-in-law, what would Mikoto think? Gen had laid out the plan, and Fugaku was still dragging his feet. That would definitely drive a wedge between them. Mikoto would be disappointed if he promised but couldn't deliver, making Fugaku look incompetent. But that wasn't Gen's problem. After all, Mikoto recognized the potential of his strategy. At the very least, he'd mess with their relationship, maybe even their marriage. At worst, he'd chip away at Fugaku's power. If Fugaku could completely outmaneuver his father-in-law and consolidate his power, then Gen would concede. Gen Uchiha, wasn't afraid of losing. Gen, that's a great idea. You've got a real head for this. I hadn't thought of that, Fugaku said with a calm, confident smile. It's not the same, Gen replied with a modest smile. I've been mulling this over for a while. If you had the same time, you'd definitely come up with something even better, Chief. Fugaku nodded slightly. Yeah, he probably would. Oh, did Mikoto mention me getting a spot in the police force? Orochimaru-sensei is swamped with work right now. He's really busy. Fugaku nodded. She did. I agreed. Just focus on building a good relationship with Orochimaru-sama. Don't worry about the police department. Thank you, Chief. It's nothing. Have some tea. They all raised their cups in a silent toast, then took a sip of the steaming brew. By the way, there's been talk in the village lately about who will be the next Hokage. What's your take on who's most likely to get the job? You probably already have your own idea, Chief. Well, Tsunade-sama and Jiraiya have left the village. Looks to me like your teacher's a shoo-in for 4th Hokage, unless something crazy happens. Unfortunately, something did happen. Hiruzen Sarutobi backed out of nominating Orochimaru and instead nominated Minato Namikaze. With Sarutobi's strong support, the backing of the nine-tailed fox's Jinchuriki's wife, combined with his own impressive war record and immense popularity, Minato Namikaze barely snagged the Hokage title. Sure, Orochimaru's personality didn't make him as popular as Minato, but plenty of ninjas appreciated his rational, almost ruthless style on the battlefield. How long had Minato been on the rise? Minato only started gaining traction in the later stages of World War III, while Orochimaru had been climbing the ranks since World War II. Even with the 3 wars, Minato's military accomplishments still didn't measure up to Orochimaru's, and his popularity was at least on par, if not higher. Plus, being a student of the legendary Sannin and Hiruzen Sarutobi, Orochimaru believed the Hokage position was practically his birthright. After all, apprentices were closer than disciples, right? Why wouldn't he support his own student over someone one level removed? Orochimaru never even considered Minato a real competitor, so he didn't take any precautions. In the end, he got blindsided and lost everything. I think so too. Hopefully, there won't be any surprises. Sorry, Shisui. I also want to be Hokage's disciple. Your ancestors are already Hokage's disciples. Shisui scratched his head and smiled. Don't worry about it. I get it. Besides, we're all Uchiha. Whoever becomes Hokage's disciple is good for the whole clan. And Gen, your brains and talent make you a better fit for the role than me. I'm totally on board. Seeing this display of unity, Fugaku was pleased. If only the rest of the clan could be so easy to deal with. At the same time, he wished his eldest son, Itachi, had been born earlier. Sure, it was the same for Uchiha as a whole if one of them became Hokage's disciple, but it made a world of difference for the individual. Shisui, you're plenty capable. Don't sell yourself short. I agree with you. As long as one of us Uchiha is among Hokage's disciples. Gen would find a chance to persuade Orochimaru another day, but given Orochimaru's pride, his chances weren't great. If Gen laid it all out for him, Orochimaru would probably just smile and say, really? I'm curious to see if Hiruzen-sensei will do what you think. And as for countermeasures, sorry, none. They chatted for another half hour. As their tea ran low, Gen and Shisui said their goodbyes, and Fugaku and Mikoto saw them off. Everyone went home to rest for the night. The next morning, Gen Uchiha went to Orochimaru's place and warned the Hokage candidate about the hidden dangers. In short, even though I'm in the lead, I can't let my guard down. Compared to Minato becoming the top Hokage, Gen still hoped that Orochimaru could defy fate and become the fourth Hokage. Hearing this, Orochimaru, dressed in a light yellow, loose-fitting kimono, smiled lightly and said, "Your analysis is reasonable, but I don't plan on doing anything. I'm eager to see who my beloved teacher will choose and if he has an unexpected surprise for me." Gen Uchiha. Orochimaru's attitude was exactly as he'd expected. The words were slightly different, a bit more sarcastic, but the meaning was essentially the same. "Are you really not going to do anything? Orochimaru-sensei, if you're not willing to act, then let me handle it." Gen felt this could still be salvaged. "Don't do anything, or I won't consider you my student." Orochimaru's golden, slit-like pupils narrowed, his expression turned severe, and he involuntarily released a surge of cold, oppressive killing intent. The murderous intent quickly subsided, barely affecting Gen. In truth, Orochimaru had almost said, "I'll kill you," but he'd caught himself just in time. For Orochimaru, they weren't just master and disciple, they were partners exploring the path to immortality. The latter was far more important to Orochimaru than the former, so he immediately changed his words as he spoke and quickly suppressed the killing intent that had unconsciously escaped him. "Okay, I'll do as you say. Who am I to argue with my teacher?" Gen Uchiha smiled helplessly and spread his hands. "Damn fate. The Hokage's son became the Hokage, the strategist's son became the strategist, and the scapegoat's son was still the scapegoat. Without being allowed to interfere, Minato was sure to win. Luckily, it wasn't all bad. They had expected it, right? Are you saying if you were stronger than me, you wouldn't listen to me?" Orochimaru said with a knowing smile. "Of course not. If I was better than you, I wouldn't listen to anything I didn't want to hear. Orochimaru-sensei, I think you're rebellious." "It just so happens, I'm rebellious too." Gen Uchiha was blunt and even teased Orochimaru at the end. Ha ha ha. Orochimaru wasn't angry. Instead, he laughed. "Yes, my student and I have a lot in common. Not being Hokage isn't necessarily a bad thing. If I became Hokage, it would significantly cut into my research time. The road to immortality might become impossible in my lifetime. If Hiruzen-sensei chooses Minato, it will resolve an obsession in my heart." Gen Uchiha smiled and said, "Easy for you to say. Even if you lose the election, I bet you'll feel disappointed and resentful." Orochimaru smiled lightly. "Perhaps. But at the same time, there will be relief. I've seen many people die young in pursuit of the Hokage title, two of whom I will never forget." "Who are they? Can you tell me?" Gen Uchiha asked knowingly. "There's no secret about it. They were Tsunade's lover, Dan Kato, and her brother, Nawaki Senju. By the way, Kato Dan was quite skilled in spirit transformation. I asked Hiruzen-sensei for it last time, but he wouldn't give it to me. If I lose this time, it will be a good opportunity." "Then I should hope you lose the election, sensei." "Idiot. Wouldn't I be able to get it if I were elected?" Ha ha ha. The master and apprentice looked at each other, raised their heads, and laughed loudly. The laughter reverberated through the house and into the courtyard. Anko Mitarashi, who had just arrived, heard the laughter and quickened her pace. What are they talking about? Why are they laughing so hard? I want to hear it too. Please follow up. We are recommending PK. If the PK fails and cannot advance to the third round of strong recommendation, then it will only be available on the shelves on the 1st of next month. Chapter 63 Master and Disciple. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What's so funny? Just happy to say it. Anko dashed into the house, flung open the tea room door, and blurted out, "What's the joke?" "Kids wouldn't understand," Gen Uchiha deadpanned. "Hey, you're only a year older than me." Anko grumbled, then ran to Orochimaru, knelt down, grabbed his arm, and shook it. "Teach, pretty please. Tell me." "Better if you don't know," Orochimaru replied, completely stone-faced. Ha ha ha. Gen Uchiha burst into laughter. A ghost of a smile flickered across Orochimaru's face, though he didn't actually laugh, which Anko thought was a bummer. Anko had ninja talent to spare, but she was still a bit of a rough-and-tumble kid. Her impressions were only skin-deep. Some things were better left unsaid, just to keep the peace. No fair. You're playing favorites, teach. Anko huffed, letting go of Orochimaru's arm and plopping down on the floor. Anko, did you finish the training regimen I set for you? Did you master the ninjutsu I taught you? Done and done. Good job. With that, Orochimaru ruffled her hair. Anko instantly forgot her earlier annoyance, and her grumpy face lit up with a huge grin. Seeing this, Uchiha sighed to himself. Kindness really was a powerful weapon. The Uchiha clan was the prime example. They might act like they hated it when people were nice to them, but deep down, they never forgot it. Oh yeah, I ran into Kurenai on the way over. She asked me to tell you to head to Barbecue Q's private booth number 3 at 7 p.m. for a class reunion. Got it, Uchiha Gen said calmly. Teach, you want to test my progress? Nah, I trust you followed through. You bet. I'm pretty sure I could ace the Chunin exams any day now. Saying this, Anko shot a glance at Gen Uchiha, who was lounging around like he owned the place. She raised her eyebrows, looking for a challenge. Hey, I've never actually seen you in action, big brother. How about you test my skills for the teacher? Gen Uchiha blinked, then grinned. Well, what do you say, Orochimaru-sensei? Sure, just try not to break her, Orochimaru said nonchalantly. Orochimaru's casual tone and choice of words was all it took to get under Anko's skin. Don't underestimate me, teach. I know I'm no match for big brother. He's a jonin, after all, and I'm just a chunin, tops. But I'm your student. I've been training with you for ages. Big brother won't have an easy time taking me down. Anko puffed out her chest, hands on her hips, a picture of confidence. Oh, really? That lazy tone was the last straw. Anko jumped to her feet, yelling, just you wait and see. Alright, let's go right now. But Orochimaru and Uchiha Gen didn't budge, each settling into a more comfortable position. Poof, star. Uchiha Gen clapped his hands together, fingers crossed, and a puff of white smoke revealed another Gen Uchiha. Let's go, little sister, the shadow clone said with a sly grin. You're totally underestimating me, big brother. You think a shadow clone can beat me? Anko's face turned crimson. She looked ready to explode. Anko, you're a genius, but you're still young. You need time to grow. Ugh, your grandpa tone is so annoying. If I smash your shadow clone, will you actually get off your butt? Yup. Alright, I'll prove it to you. With that, Uchiha Gen's shadow clone and Anko headed to the nearest training ground. Orochimaru's residence was in the heart of Konoha, so they couldn't exactly go all out there. As soon as they were gone, Uchiha Gen started pumping Orochimaru for ninjutsu secrets. Orochimaru's fascination with ninjutsu was legendary, and the two were soon lost in a lively discussion. About 15 minutes later, the tea room door slid open again. Uchiha Gen, looking as pristine as ever, and Anko, looking utterly defeated, bedraggled, and sporting a few minor injuries, reappeared. Poof, the shadow clone vanished in a puff of smoke. Gen Uchiha absorbed all the information his clone had gathered, and the remaining chakra flowed back into his body. Teach, why is big brother so strong? I got stomped in taijutsu, genjutsu, and ninjutsu. Anko slumped onto a cushion, all her usual pep gone. Seeing his student on the verge of tears, Orochimaru actually offered some comfort for once. Lighten up. How could I call him your big brother if he wasn't capable? You're a genius, and your big brother is a genius of geniuses. He's among the best of the elite jonin as it is. You're only at the chunin level, so it's no surprise you couldn't beat him. I'd be shocked if you had won. Hearing her teacher's pep talk, Anko felt a little better. This was the first time he had ever tried to cheer her up. What are you doing? Anko asked, scooting away from the outstretched hand. Just healing your boo-boos, Gen Uchiha said with a small smile, as green chakra symbolizing life force radiated from his palm. Anko felt like she had been punched in the gut. She gave a watery smile. Big brother, you know medical ninjutsu? It's just medical ninjutsu, what's so hard about that? Uchiha Gen flashed another smile. His tone was calm, his expression casual, even a little innocent. Anko felt another blow to her pride. Her feelings were all jumbled up, and she wanted to cry but couldn't. She would never challenge her big brother again. Never. The guy was just too much. Orochimaru kept a straight face, but inwardly he nodded. His student definitely had the same kind of smug swagger he used to show off to Jiraiya back in the day. After quickly healing Anko's minor injuries, Uchiha withdrew his hand. Go wash up. I'll treat you to your favorite, mochi balls and Anko soup afterward, he said. Anko was nothing if not adaptable. She bounced back quickly, adjusting her attitude. She got up, raced to the bathroom, and yelled over her shoulder, I'm gonna eat you all out of house and home. Uchiha Gen and Orochimaru exchanged amused glances. Orochimaru-sensei, want to come hang out in Konoha with us? Nah, I'm good. Food and shopping is what young people like. When I relax, I prefer to study cells, chromosomes, ribonucleic acid, deoxyribonucleic acid, cell nuclei, cytoplasm. The long string of technical jargon made Uchiha Gen's forehead wrinkle. Can we please not do this right now? Seeing Uchiha Gen's expression, Orochimaru stopped his tirade and chuckled softly. He was still the master showman when it came to messing with his students. Teach, can you train me a little this afternoon? Anko asked, returning with freshly washed hair. Her eyes were both eager and a little worried. Give me your new training plan. All right, but only for a little while. I have work to do this afternoon. Okay. Anko nodded eagerly, then grinned at Gen Uchiha. Let's go, big brother. Bye, Orochimaru-sensei. Orochimaru waved goodbye, the corners of his lips tilting upward. Having apprentices like these wasn't so bad after all. Chapter 64 Classmates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the evening, around 6:50, Gen Uchiha, dressed in a black robe with silver trim, escorted Anko to Yakiniku-Q, Konoha's premier high-end restaurant. The end of the ninja world war seemed to have sparked a celebratory mood, as the restaurant was bustling with Konoha ninjas. Since Gen Uchiha wasn't sporting the Uchiha clan crest and wasn't exactly a household name in Konoha, he didn't attract much attention beyond a passing glance or two. Most folks were too focused on their grilling to notice. Stepping into the private room, they found a lively gathering already in progress. Kurinai Yuhi, Asuma Sarutobi, Ebisu, Aoba Yamashiro, Azuru, Iwaki Dai, Gama Shiranui, Heiate Gecko, and Sunset Mao were all present. Asuma Sarutobi, already puffing away on a cigarette despite his young age, stood out the most. He'd been a bit of a rebel in his younger days. Besides this group, Gen Uchiha's peers also included Bamboo Dragonfly, Shimon Holy, Izumo Kamizuki, Kotetsu Hagain, Irika Yumino, Mizuki, and Ibiki Marino. Getting everyone together was a feat, what with ninja duties, personal lives, and all. Same period didn't necessarily mean graduating the same year. It simply meant sharing time at the Ninja Academy, regardless of age or grade. Gen and Anko are here. Anko, come sit by me. Gen, long time no see. Gen, I heard you're a jonin, like Kakashi. That's awesome. Gen's got a ton of experience. He wasn't always top of the class, but he was always up there. I heard Gen became Lord Orochimaru's student. His future's looking bright. As soon as they walked in, the room erupted with greetings. Gen Uchiha responded warmly, ditching any pretense of rank and acting like one of the gang. This surprised quite a few people. When did Gen Uchiha become so approachable? Back at the academy, he'd always been distant, a bit aloof, and hard to get close to, but this Gen was a welcome change. A jonin acting all high and mighty would have killed the vibe. Hey, Shien, you're looking more beautiful than ever. Greeting everyone, Uchiha Gen couldn't resist teasing Yuzuki Shien as he approached, with her long purple hair, delicate features, fair skin, and a flowing lavender dress. She had that girl next door kind of charm. Hey Gecko, ever the picture of sleeplessness and other things. Shot Gen Uchiha a steady look after hearing his comment, caught off guard by the compliment. Yuzuki Shien, usually confident and considered a genius among commoner ninjas, felt her face flush. A little flustered, she blurted out, "Thank you. You're looking more handsome yourself, Gen, and your personality's definitely improved." A collective ooh rippled through the room, turning Shien's cheeks even redder as she quickly looked down, under the table. Hey Gecko clenched his fists, casting another calm gaze at Gen Uchiha. Yuzuki Shien really was something special among civilian ninjas. She was able to become a special jonin and a member of ANBU with her skills in ordinary ninjutsu and swordsmanship. Even though the special jounin and ANBU members are sometimes out of place in the story, it is actually very, very difficult for civilian ninjas to become special jounin and ANBU members. Some civilian ninjas stay genin and chunin their entire lives. With sufficient ninjutsu resources, Yuzuki Shien could have become a full-fledged jonin. But those resources were scarce for civilian ninjas. Konoha's leadership had always been selective about handing out ninjutsu. Of course, being a jonin wasn't just about combat prowess, but you needed a certain level of skill and resourcefulness to tackle tough missions. In peacetime, becoming a jonin usually meant completing 100 A-rank missions or the equivalent in S-rank tasks, each fraught with danger. If you had a truly outstanding specialty, you could get promoted even with fewer missions completed. Take Shizune, for example. Her medical skills were second only to Tsunade's in the ninja world, so she could have become a jonin in any village. "Thanks," Gen replied. "I hear you're pretty good with a sword. If you ever have time, come by. We could spar, learn from each other. I know a thing or two about swordsmanship." Uchiha smiled, radiating warmth and sincerity. Hey Gecko clenched his fists tighter, grinding his teeth. Gen Uchiha was putting a lot of pressure on him. The wealthy clan and being a talented jonin made him feel insecure, like comparing himself to the son of a rich man when he came from a middle-class background. While Hey Gecko had rare bloodline abilities, he was just from a ninja family, but not even a small one. Uchiha Gen subtly turned away from Moonlight Hey, thinking he couldn't see it, right? His eyesight is pretty good. Yuzuki Shien's heart fluttered at Gen Uchiha's invitation. Training with a jonin could definitely improve her swordsmanship. She felt like she'd hit a wall lately. "Okay," she said, lifting her gaze and brushing her hair back. "But can I even get into the Uchiha compound?" That the Uchiha compound was something of a mystery to civilian ninjas, like the Hyuga clan and other big clans. Wow, Moonlight Hayate felt his heart shatter. At this point, they were young, and he hadn't confessed his feelings for her, only felt an unrequited love. "The Uchiha compound isn't some dragon's lair. Just tell them you're with me if you run into trouble." A chorus of oohs went around the room. What? If she wants to go, she can go. After that, Uchiha Gen walked over and sat next to Yuzuki Shien. Hey Gecko, perhaps out of awkwardness, hadn't taken the seat next to her, leaving it open. Once seated, Uchiha Gen started chatting with Yuzuki Shien. He peppered the conversation with humorous remarks, making her giggle and crinkle her eyes into crescents. Moonlight Gale, on the side, watched them happily chatting away. Although his teeth hadn't broken, he still felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Above Shien's sunset face were red beans, and above that was Asuma. Hong and Enko were whispering to each other. Hong was wearing a look of amazement on her face, and the two of them were very absorbed in the discussion. Asuma puffed out a cigarette, listening intently as if unintentionally, wondering in his heart, is Gen Uchiha that good? Can a shadow clone really beat Enko that easily? "Sorry we're late." The door burst open, and Might Guy, clad in his signature green jumpsuit and bowl cut, bounded in, dragging a listless silver-haired boy with him. "Guy, Kakashi. You're here. We've been waiting. Grab a seat, dig in." "Yeah, let's grill." Several of the more enthusiastic classmates eagerly greeted them. "Kakashi, snap out of it. Obito and Rin wouldn't want to see you like this." You gotta live your life with their hopes. Seeing Kakashi so down, Uchiha Gen felt compelled to offer some words of encouragement. Kakashi perked up a little after hearing this, trying not to dampen the mood. He forced a smile and took a seat. I was talking to him, and he didn't even react. You're amazing, Gen. Kakashi, youth is about passion. Guy punctuated his words with a thumbs up and a wide grin, flashing 2 rows of gleaming white teeth. Many students couldn't stand to look at this, feeling really ashamed. Gen Uchiha smiled and wasn't disgusted. Who could dislike Kaihuang? Comparing gods with a mortal body, this is the truest portrayal of Metkai. Alright, Guy, sit down and get grilling. Youth is incomplete without meat. Meat is the best way to fuel the fires of youth. Wow, Gen. You have such a deep understanding of youth. I never knew you understood me so well. I'm so touched, Guy exclaimed, tears streaming down his face, much to the dismay of some, like Asuma and Ebisu. Gen Uchiha. If you keep hogging the meat, we're gonna grill you instead. No. The last 2 or 3 chapters have been a bit more daily. I wonder how you feel. Chapter 65 Asma is messy in the wind. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The barbecue wrapped up around 8:30 p.m., and everyone split the bill. Let's be real, even for ninjas, barbecue is pricey. If one person was footing the bill, only a handful could afford it on their own. We're talking Sarutobi Asuma, with the Hokage's backing, Uchiha Gen, born into the wealthy Uchiha clan, and Hatake Kakashi, who inherited a fortune from his family. Those guys could swing it. Afterward, the group stood outside barbecue queue, chatting for a bit before heading off in smaller groups with their closer friends, either going home or doing something else. Before you knew it, only 7 people were left: Uchiha Gen, Mitarashi Anko, Sarutobi Asuma, Yuhi Kurenai, Yuzuki Yugao, Moonlight Hay-8, and Ebisu. Uchiha Gen and Yuzuki Yugao were standing close, caught up in conversation and hitting it off. Mitarashi Anko and Yuhi Kurenai were together, being besties. And Sarutobi Asuma and Ebisu were side by side in that kind of master-follower vibe. Moonlight Hay-8, standing alone, looked like a fifth wheel. Alright, guys, I'm heading out, Uchiha Gen said. He'd already asked Yuzuki Yugao to a movie, and she was down. Hold on a sec, Captain. Heh. Uchiha Gen chuckled. Red, you didn't call me Captain all night. Why the sudden formality? Sounds kinda sus. Hong, why are you calling him Captain Gen? Asuma asked, cigarette dangling from his mouth, hair sticking up every which way. During the Kirigakure campaign, I was under Gen's command. I was one of his 3 subordinates. Asuma nodded slowly. He'd wanted to go to Kirigakure, but, damn old man. No biggie. I just thought we could all grab some tea and snacks, chill, and talk shop about our training. Yuhi Hong said with a smile, nudging Anko's arm. Anko picked up on the cue. Yeah, totally. It's rare we're all together. It'd be a waste to split so soon. Come on, man, cut me some slack. Gen Uchiha said, turning to Yuzuki Shien with a smile. Shien, what do you think? Besides Moonlight Hay-8, who was eavesdropping intently, no one knew about the movie plans, so, Moonlight Hay-8 perked up when he heard this, looking at Yuzuki Shien with hopeful eyes. He did not want the girl he liked going to the movies with another dude. Yuzuki Shien's heart fluttered a little. She couldn't believe Uchiha Gen was being so considerate. Sure, they were classmates, but she was just a genin with a normal background. It was way easier for guys like Uchiha Gen, coming from an old, rich family and being a genius, to get girls. Girls had a tendency to read into things and get all emotional. Same deal with guys like Sarutobi Asuma, born into ninja royalty. Just plain easier. For girls who were shallow or super ambitious, these guys were irresistible. Even if a girl wasn't materialistic, a good background was still a huge plus. In the original stories, Sarutobi Asuma snagged a total knockout like Yuhi Kurenai. Gotta wonder if being the Hokage's son gave him a leg up. In the real world, being the Hokage's son would be like being the president's kid. How many women could resist that kind of attention? Of the people there, Enko, Yuzuki Shien, Gekko Heiate, and Ebisu were all genin. I'm good with whatever, Yuzuki Shien said with a small smile. Alright, let's roll. Since Barbecue Q was right in the middle of the commercial district, they found a tea house pretty quick. They snagged a big private room, ordered tea and snacks, and everyone started taking turns talking about their training and experiences. Yuzuki Yugao and Ebisu were from totally normal families. Moonlight Heiate came from a ninja family, but not one with any real clout. The other four guys came from families way more powerful. Even Yuhi Kurinai, with the weakest background of the bunch, had a pretty good pedigree. The Yuhi clan was a ninja family too, focused on genjutsu for generations. Their genjutsu game was strong, on par with some of the big clans. They had Jonin running the show for ages, so, even though they weren't throwing fireballs around, those three were listening intently, hanging on every word. Everyone had their say, and soon it was just Gen Uchiha and Asuma Sarutobi left. Gen Uchiha, being the only jounin there, figured he should go last so he wouldn't overshadow the others. Sarutobi Asuma, even though he was just a chunin, had his own pride. He knew he wasn't as strong, but when it came to training and experience, he figured he could hold his own against Uchiha Gen. There were things about his dad he didn't get, but he was a ninjutsu expert, a legend, the strongest Hokage. Plus, he'd had guidance from the family elders. He had plenty to offer in terms of training and experience. Seeing that Asuma wasn't gonna speak, and was just sitting there lighting a cigarette, Uchiha Gen rolled his eyes. If he wanted to die on that hill, so be it. Uchiha Gen took a sip of tea to wet his throat and started laying out his knowledge. He started with taijutsu, going over fist and kick techniques, swordsmanship, shuriken and kunai throwing, then moved on to genjutsu. He explained that illusions targeted the five senses, so they fell into five categories: sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. Sight and sound illusions were the most common, the other three getting rarer. Uchiha Gen was good at visual illusions. He had a basic understanding of the others, but didn't have time to really dig in yet. Then there was ninjutsu, his understanding of the three-body technique, the shadow clone technique, the instant body technique, and the five elements release. He was all about fire release. Gen Uchiha was alright at wind release and earth release, maybe average for a jounin, but his fire release skills were hard to beat. Even Sarutobi Hiruzen might not match his ability to crank up the heat. There were two famous fire-style clans in Konoha, Uchiha and Sarutobi. The Sarutobi clan was second because the Uchiha clan was the best in the ninja world. The Sarutobi clan was just a famous fire escape clan in the ninja world. Uchiha Gen wasn't just rambling, he was tailoring his advice to the people in the room, giving specific examples and tips. All this took a while, and Gen Uchiha deliberately stretched things out. Plus, 5 people had already shared their stories. By the time Gen Uchiha finished, the tea house owner was telling them he was closing up. Everyone was locked in, saying they'd had a great time and learned a lot. The owner's announcement snapped them back to reality. They looked out the window and saw that the lights in the commercial district were dimming, the moon was setting, and it was way quieter outside. Everyone chipped in for their share, and they kept talking as they walked through the empty streets. Uchiha Gen didn't finish until they were clear of the shopping district. It was getting late, and people were wanting to get home, especially the ones with strict parents. No one was in the mood for Asuma Sarutobi's long-winded stories, so they made their excuses and bolted. Uchiha Gen didn't walk Yuzuki Shien home. A guy's gotta have some mystique, especially one as awesome as him. Everyone scattered. Ebisu, the loyal follower, made his excuses and bailed, not wanting to overstay his welcome, which left Sarutobi Asuma standing alone, confused, on the empty street corner. What the hell just happened? The worst part was, he'd been so caught up in the conversation he'd forgotten to grab the mic. After a minute, Sarutobi Asuma lit a cigarette, put his hands in his pockets, and strolled off. As a rebellious teenager, staying out late, or even all night, was his thing. And yes, I asked the editor, and I was selected in the 3rd round, and I won't be able to get perfect attendance this month. Chapter 66. The dust has settled. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the class reunion, Gen Uchiha slipped back into his routine, with one exception. He'd be heading out of the village for a bit. He needed to resupply the 2 Uchihas locked up in that cave. making sure they didn't starve. Plus, he had to deal with those traps wrecked by wild animals, clear away the carcasses, and cover up the explosion. Normally, leaving the village wasn't a piece of cake for ninjas. You needed a solid reason, like a mission. But Gen Uchiha was different. As the police force's deputy captain, Gen Uchiha's job was patrolling Konoha, inside and out. That included the 6 miles or so outside the village gates. So, Gen Uchiha threw on his Jonin vest and made sure the Uchiha crest was visible. The Konoha guards at the gate wouldn't dare stop him. Being able to leave the village whenever he pleased was one of the perks of Gen Uchiha's position in the police force. A few days went by, but Yuzuki Shien didn't show. Gen Uchiha wasn't sweating it, he just kept living his life. Worth mentioning, Konoha's top dogs, led by the 3rd Hokage, were down in the Fire Country's capital. The call on who'd be the next Hokage was coming soon. One afternoon, Gen Uchiha was sprawled on the living room sofa, chilling after lunch. He always felt great after a good meal, with no responsibilities or worries. "Is Master Gen home?" that the respectful voice drifted up from downstairs. Gen Uchiha answered, then got up, walked to the window, and looked down. He saw a woman with long, purple hair in a ponytail, decked out in a black combat suit and carrying a ninja sword. She had striking looks and stood next to an Uchiha woman. She was pretty tall, too. "Gen, sorry to bother you." Mao Yushien felt a little awkward, but she still spoke plainly. She'd been waiting for Gen Uchiha to reach out for the past few days. When he didn't, she got a little antsy. For the next 3 days, she went back and forth, wondering if she should just go to him. Back then, she'd been all fired up, not thinking straight. But once she calmed down, she realized it might look weird, rushing straight to the Uchiha compound. People might think she was trying to latch onto him. After 6 days, Yuzuki Shien figured the gossip wouldn't be too bad, and she finally worked up the nerve to head to the Uchiha clan. She was still debating at the gate when this friendly Uchiha lady showed up. After a quick chat, the lady insisted on showing her the way. "Don't worry about it. Gets boring being alone sometimes. Hang on, I'll come down and get the door." Heading downstairs and opening the door, Gen Uchiha smiled. "Sorry for the wait, Mrs. Rika." "No trouble at all, no trouble. Master Gen, don't be so passive. Sometimes guys need to take the lead." "Gotta run." That the Uchiha lady winked at Uchiha Gen with a warm smile, then turned and headed off, looking at Yuzuki Shien, who was avoiding eye contact. Gen Uchiha grinned. "Come on in." "Okay." Maoyue Shien walked in, keeping her head down. Once she was in the courtyard, she looked around curiously. It was tidy enough, she thought, but a little cluttered. Well, yeah. Gen Uchiha had used a wind release to clean up, and even though he'd toned it down, it was still a bit much. Inside, Gen Uchiha grabbed 2 bottles of mulberry juice. "Thanks." Seeing her favorite drink, Yuzuki Shien figured Uchiha Gen had gotten it especially for her. She felt a warm flutter of happiness and smiled brightly. Actually, it was just a coincidence. The Uchiha household just stocked a ton of mulberry juice. Word was that mulberry was a good boost for guys. "You're welcome. After we finish this, we can spar in the yard." "Sounds good." They chatted as they drank, and it wasn't long before they'd finished. Uchiha Gen grabbed his old ninja sword and went out to the yard with Yuzuki Yugan. They made the sign of confrontation, and then the sound of clanging swords filled the air. Even as a genin, Yuzuki Yugan's swordsmanship was pretty polished. Uchiha Gen was about to go to the battlefield, and Yuzuki Yugao, a civilian, went without saying. To survive the cruel ninja war, Yuzuki Yugan must have at least some skills in the genin level and is considered an elite among genin. Of course, Yuzuki Yugan's level cannot be compared to that of genin Uchiha. Uchiha Gen had copied the physical techniques and swordsmanship routines of Konoha ninjas and enemies during the war, coupled with the Uchiha fluid techniques and swordsmanship that the Uchiha clan has continuously inherited, improved, and refined over time. Although he is not a master of physical skills or swordsmanship, nor does he have his own sect, he can still be called a master of physical skills and swordsmanship. The Uchiha clan's physical skills and swordsmanship are all prepared for the opening of the Sharingan Eye. Only when combined with the Sharingan Eye will the best effect be achieved. Quick and clean, ever-changing, efficient, and ruthless. If you mastered it, you'd be like Uchiha Madara beating the Ninja Alliance with taijutsu. It's practically an art form. Sparring, giving pointers, sparring again, resting, and repeating. After a while, Uchiha Gen walked Yuzuki Shien home. As they strolled through the streets of Konoha, they overheard two ninjas talking. Did you hear? Minato's gonna be Hokage. Seriously? Where'd you hear that? Fresh news. Hokage and the others are back from the Fire Country's capital. Hokage nominated Minato, and the daimyo signed off on it. That's awesome. Minato saved our lives. I'll never forget his heroism at Canopy Bridge. Yeah, Minato will definitely make Konoha better. These two were clearly huge Namikaze Minato fans. They walked a few more steps, and more ninja chatter reached their ears. How can this be? Why would Hokage pass over his own student and nominate his student? Minato made a huge contribution in the Great Ninja War, but Orochimaru's contributions are just as big. And his achievements in World War II are even greater. That the ninja speaking looked shocked and disbelieving. Another ninja gave a bitter smile. I don't want to believe it either, but the administration department announced it. The date for the Jonin vote of confidence is set. That the first ninja opened his mouth, but all that came out was a sigh. The Hokage position wasn't just about the candidate, it was about his supporters, too. It had real consequences. Supporters of the loser might not get punished, but supporters of the winner would definitely get first dibs on the good stuff. No matter how selfless Watergate is, he cannot choose anyone else when his own supporters have suitable candidates. This is one of his political foundations. What's a Hokage without enough supporters? Hear that? Minato's becoming Hokage. Aha. What? Give me a reaction. I'm okay with either Minato or Orochimaru. What do you want me to say? Ugh, you're such a fence-sitter. What do you know? I'm neutral, tolerant, and fraternal. Whatever. That the neutral crowd was small. Most Konoha ninjas leaned one way or the other, and generally, Orochimaru had more backers. What they thought was a sure thing had turned into a loss, and Orochimaru's supporters were disappointed, but except for a few diehards who couldn't handle it, everyone was slowly accepting the news. Watergate supporters, on the other hand, were ecstatic about their victory. As the news spread, more and more people heard it. It wasn't just the ninjas, all of Konoha was buzzing. Yuzuki looked at Uchiha Gen, who hadn't changed his expression at all, with worry in her eyes. As Lord Orochimaru's disciple, he must be feeling lost and sad right now, right? It's okay, I'm fine with it. Gen Uchiha smiled, because she was so worried. Yuzuki Shien thought the smile looked forced, but Gen Uchiha was telling the truth. He'd seen this coming. Without a warning, Orochimaru was destined to lose the election. Yuzuki Shien didn't know what to say. After hesitating, she reached out and took Uchiha Gen's hand. Uchiha Gen looked at Yuzuki Shien, surprised, but she was already staring at the ground, her cheeks flushed and her ears bright red. As for the warmth, softness, and smoothness, there is no such thing as Maui. Shien is used to wearing gloves and holding a sword to practice and fight. Ahem, could you take off your gloves next time? Ignoring her embarrassment, Yuzuki Shien looked up, surprised. Instead of dodging, the shameless Gen Uchiha winked. That was it. Mao Yu Shien couldn't take it anymore. She let go of his hand and bolted. Watching Yuzuki Shien run off, Gen Uchiha laughed. After that, he turned into an alley, clapped his hands together, and a puff of white smoke appeared. When he walked out, he looked like an adult. No way to buy alcohol for him as a minor in Konoha, or even in a ninja world. They don't sell it at all. It's an anomaly in the ninja world. They unanimously ban minors from drinking but turn a blind eye to all the other crap they go through. Right now, Orochimaru was definitely craving a drink, right? Chapter 67 Domineering Senior Brother. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After grabbing some wine, I got to Orochimaru's place only to find he wasn't even there. Gen Uchiha, never one for manners, just climbed in through the window, found a spot, and started meditating to build up his chakra. About half an hour later, he heard someone outside and opened the door. It was Anko. Where's sensei? Not here. Seriously? Didn't think he'd lose the election. What a bummer. Anko followed Gen inside, plopped down, and said, sounding totally bummed. It's not the end of the world just because you can't be the Hokage's disciple, right? Gen Uchiha said coolly. Hey, it's the Hokage's disciple. Anko, annoyed by his calmness, straightened up to emphasize her point. Then I say you should try to become Minato-senpai's disciple. With Orochimaru-sensei pulling the strings, it should work out. Nah, I'm good. Anko shook her head hard. Being Orochimaru's disciple was way more important than being buddies with the Hokage. Alright, let's hit the store and grab some stuff before Orochimaru-sensei gets back. You cook? Anko asked, sounding surprised. Guys who know their way around a kitchen are rare as hen's teeth. What do you think? Gen Uchiha said, rolling his eyes. Yeah, you're just like me. So, what's on the menu for tonight? Uchiha Gen stroked his chin. I heard Orochimaru-sensei loves eggs. How about Odin tonight? Sounds good. Anko, a simple soul, had been down in the dumps, but the thought of good food snapped her right out of it, and she started daydreaming about dinner. Let's go. Okay. The two went to the local market to pick up groceries and got straight to work. When they got back, Anko could cook, but she was a bit of a butcher in the kitchen. It tasted okay, but nothing special. Still, she could manage the basics. Around 7:30 in the evening, Orochimaru, fresh from a chat with Danzo, popped up from underground in the yard. He was surprised to see the lights on. Then, something clicked, and a smile played on his lips. Opening the door, Orochimaru walked in. Sensei, you're back. Anko, hearing him, ran out of the kitchen, greeting him excitedly. Orochimaru nodded, then saw another figure in the kitchen. He was a little surprised. Gen, you're here too? Yep, Gen's making Odin. I got a bunch of your favorite eggs, sensei. It'll be ready soon. Orochimaru felt a warmth inside, but he kept his cool on the outside. That's thoughtful of you. 10 minutes later, the three were sitting around the dining room table. Steam rose from the fragrant Odin, divided into sections for boiled eggs, greens, meat, and mushrooms. Orochimaru-sensei, want some wine? Gen Uchiha twisted the cap off the bottle, raising an eyebrow. Orochimaru hesitated, then nodded. He didn't usually drink. Alcohol messed with his focus and logic. But tonight felt different, so he figured he could have a drink. His teacher's unexpected actions had been a real disappointment. He'd fought tooth and nail for Konoha his whole life. What had it all been for? You want some too? Anko, busy stuffing her face, was surprised to see Gen Uchiha pouring wine for his teacher and then himself. What, you got a problem with that? Uchiha Gen shot Anko a look. Yeah, you're not old enough, and alcohol's one of the 3 ninja no-nos. So. Anko, rules are important, sure, but sometimes they're worthless. When are they worthless? When I don't feel like following them, Uchiha Gen said flatly. Dude, so badass, Anko thought, glancing at her teacher. Seeing that he didn't say anything, she found the courage to pipe up, I want some too. Gen Uchiha looked at Orochimaru. It's okay to drink now and then. Rules are pretty useless sometimes. With that, Orochimaru grabbed a goblet and took a sip, then used his chopsticks to pick up an egg, swallowing it whole like a snake. Hearing this, Gen Uchiha poured a glass for Anko. Alright, let's clink glasses. From now on, you do you, Uchiha Gen said, raising his glass. Clink. The 3 glasses bumped over the steaming pot, a sweet, clear sound, then they all drank. Anko smacked her lips. It wasn't as good as candy, but it wasn't bad. Then, they ate, drank, and chatted. Anko even tried to cheer Orochimaru up. He didn't say much, but nodded. Uchiha Gen didn't offer any comfort because he knew Orochimaru didn't need it. Anko's understanding of Orochimaru was skin deep. The Hokage position wasn't as important to him as she thought. Halfway through the Oden, Anko was already tipsy, the booze hitting her all at once. After getting the slightly drunk Anko to the guest bedroom upstairs and tucking her in, Uchiha went back to the dining room and sat down. "Teacher Orochimaru, I need your help with something." "Go on." Orochimaru lifted his wine glass and clinked it against Uchiha Gen's. A strange flush bloomed on his pale, bloodless face, like a paper doll's blush. "I want to buy some research equipment." "You've got connections, right?" That if he wanted to understand the Sharingan's evolution, he needed top-notch equipment. Even with the Byakugan's insight, the observation wasn't comprehensive or accurate enough. "What kind of equipment are you looking for?" "Something that can comprehensively observe and analyze data from the human body." "You're planning human experiments." Orochimaru swirled the crimson wine, half smiling, his expression coupled with the blush giving him a strange look. "Yeah, I want to test out one of my theories." Uchiha Gen wasn't about to hide anything from Orochimaru. He couldn't. Based on Orochimaru's scientific experience, he could guess the general direction of the research just by looking at the equipment. "Then you need to watch your back, otherwise you'll end up a rogue ninja." "Teacher, unlike you, my research is covered by a project assigned by Konoha's top brass." "It's not that easy. If they find out, you make excuses, and the higher-ups deal with the fallout. Unless I decide to leave Konoha. Then, no one can make me." Saying this, Orochimaru seemed lost in thought. "I get it, teacher. I'll be careful." Uchiha Gen felt a pang in his heart, and cautiously asked, "Teacher, are you thinking about leaving Konoha?" Orochimaru looked at his like-minded disciple. This guy knew him better than Tsunade, Jiraiya, or the teacher ever had. There were few secrets between them, and they both knew the other's true identity. "Yeah. If you can't be Hokage, there's not much point in sticking around. You'll just be held back when it comes to research, especially after the fourth takes over. With the fourth in charge, Danzo will never be able to do whatever he wants, and funding will take a nosedive. My research will be hit hard. In that case, it's better to cut ties with Konoha and find a place where I can do the experiments I want." Gen Uchiha was shocked. A thought flashed through his mind. Chapter 68 Emancipate the Mind. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Did Orochimaru's capture of Konoha villagers mirror the Konoha ninjas' own experiments, a desperate attempt to sever their ties with the village? Was he clinging to Konoha, yet deliberately committing unforgivable acts to force a final break, both for Konoha and for himself? Eliminating options removes the burden of choice. Following the Nine-Tails attack, Orochimaru might have anticipated Danzo exposing his forbidden practices to seize the Hokage position. Once revealed, Hiruzen Sarutobi would have to publicly disavow Orochimaru. Failing to address such blatant violations of the village's core principles would erode Konoha's unity. A divided leadership would spell Konoha's doom, with Tsunade and Jiraiya absent, and Minato Namikaze deceased. Did Danzo assume he was the obvious choice for fifth Hokage? Unfortunately for him, Hiruzen Sarutobi shamelessly returned to power after retirement. Danzo's scheme backfired, costing Konoha a powerful asset and driving Orochimaru, a legendary ninja and Hokage's protege, to defect, triggering a disastrous chain of events. It was akin to a royal prince with succession rights abandoning the kingdom, creating a terrible impression. If even privileged elites could defect, how corrupt and vulnerable must the nation be? Such doubts would naturally invite exploitation. Orochimaru's internal conflict was evident. Despite his composed demeanor, the third Hokage's actions deeply wounded him. "Orochimaru-sensei, if we leave Konoha, our funding will be even tighter. Leaving Konoha means freedom. We can now employ methods previously unavailable, like robbing from the rich to help ourselves. Stealing wealth to alleviate our own poverty." Orochimaru chuckled. "Precisely. There are plenty of wealthy people who deserve to be fleeced. We can milk them dry." Uchiha Gen laughed. "Great minds think alike. That was my plan all along. Experimental equipment isn't cheap. Even if I sold everything, it wouldn't be enough, and it would be tough for the clan to get ahead. Orochimaru shook his head, amused. A hero? Our master-disciple plan violates ninja codes and societal norms. It's pure rebellion. Once exposed, we'd be enemies of the world. Ninjas were created as tools, paid mercenaries. Now, Orochimaru and Gen Uchiha proposed cutting out the middleman, using their skills to directly plunder, a classic act of rebellion. History shows how ruthlessly rebels are crushed. I think we're heroes, or rather, enlightened ones. Enlightened? Sensei, isn't this world messed up? We, with our extraordinary abilities, are treated as cheap tools, not rulers. It's perverse. Damn. Even Orochimaru was shocked. He set down his glass, performed a sensory jutsu, and sighed in relief when he detected no eavesdroppers. Gen, your ideas are dangerous. If the wrong people hear you, they'll try to eliminate you. Will they find out? Gen Uchiha smiled knowingly. Sensei, if ninjas ruled the world, wouldn't we have all the research funds, materials, and equipment we could ever want? Orochimaru swallowed hard, suddenly sober. He thought his plan of robbing the rich was radical, but his apprentice's ambitions were far grander. But, his apprentice made a point. Why did corrupt nobles rule? If ninjas were in charge, would the tragedies that had occurred still happen? The nobles of various countries are financially supporting the major ninja villages. There have always been marriages between the daimyo of the 5 major countries, and there have also been marriages between nobles of various countries. In addition, there are various interests involved. From the samurai era to the ninja era, they have always been prosperous. Okay, Gen, let's drop it. We're not powerful enough to change everything. Never reveal these thoughts to anyone else. Orochimaru took a deep breath, picked up his glass, and drank. The wine tasted better with each sip. Don't worry, Orochimaru-sensei, I'm not stupid. Also, I wouldn't recommend that you sever your ties with Konoha. It would implicate me, your apprentice, and Anko. Don't be so selfish. Gen Uchiha sipped his wine confidently. Heh, you've got nerve. But, not all of it is bad. If you're good enough, you can definitely inherit the political legacy I leave behind. Orochimaru smiled wickedly, not angry, and gave him the benefits after leaving. Uchiha Gen shook his head and said, if you were here, it would be easier for me to grasp your political legacy with your help. Also, even though there was a chance to stop it, my teacher was brought into disrepute and his reputation was ruined. This is not what a qualified disciple should do. If you really want to study the path to immortality wholeheartedly, you can learn from Tsunade-sama and Jiraiya-sama. With your strength and status, is it possible that they dare to force you to do something? Cutting ties with Konoha is too drastic. Master-disciple bonds, friendships, the admiration of supporters, the hard-earned reputation, all gone. I know you're determined to sacrifice everything for immortality, but there's a better way. Why not take it? Is it just to prove how serious you are? Or were you too disappointed for not being favored by your master, so you went low? Or is it both? How childish, Orochimaru. After all these years, this is the first time he has heard someone call him naive. This person was still his apprentice. If we don't cut our ties with Konoha, things won't be so easy to do. Like what? Just being more cautious, making the process more troublesome, and not revealing your true colors. Is that hard? If you can't manage it, I can help, but I'll charge a commission, of course. Provocation is a clumsy tactic, but it works, especially on proud individuals. And Orochimaru was definitely proud. Humph, I don't need your help yet. Even without ninjutsu, I can create poisons that no more than 5 people can cure in today's world. With just poison, I can make the rich and powerful dance to my tune. Can you do that? Gen Uchiha shook his head honestly. No, I'm limited to crude methods like ninjutsu. Exactly. We ninjas need to think outside the box. With the right mindset, we can overcome any challenge. Orochimaru. In other words, it is shameless, throwing aside the strong man's demeanor, and putting interests first, but, if it's for immortality, it's fine to be shameless. I have to create a face-changing ninjutsu, so that being shameless is really shameless, the outward face is gone, and the inner face can be preserved. Alright, let's change the subject. I'll consider your suggestion. Let's drink. Good. Tomorrow, I'll give you a list of the equipment I need. You can estimate the price, and I'll find the time to acquire it. Okay. Because you performed so well tonight, I'll skip the markup and give you the real price. Are you even human, gouging your own apprentice? You still need to take a commission when you do things for the teacher, are you still a human being? Ha ha ha. They exchanged glances, then threw back their heads and laughed. The laughter echoed through the yard and reached the guest bedroom on the second floor. Enko, disturbed, frowned, turned over, and mumbled something. The glasses clinked, and they finished their drinks. Uchiha stayed in a guest room on the first floor rather than going home. Chapter 69 The Art of Spiritualization, Part 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Even though he'd gotten plastered the night before, Uchiha's internal clock still woke him up on time, no headache, no hangover. He was young and in good shape, and he'd bought decent booze, not that cheap stuff. He got up and made breakfast, which he ate with Orochimaru and Enko. Then, handed Orochimaru the cash and a list of the research equipment he needed. Orochimaru figured it would cost around 90 million taels, which was about 45 million in today's money. According to Orochimaru, if tried to buy it himself, it would run him at least 120 million taels. With that settled, hit the road back home. Whenever he passed villagers he knew, they'd stop him to offer their condolences. He couldn't just brush them off, so he had to stop and chat back at his place. Before he could even get comfortable, Fugaku Uchiha sent someone to fetch him. When he arrived, Shisui and Itachi were already there. Uchiha sighed and got ready to face the music. He was beat after repeating the same story a dozen times. On the morning of the third day, the whole village was buzzing about the Jonin vote of confidence. Practically every Jonin in Konoha packed into the Hokage building's main conference room, including Uchiha. Orochimaru was a no-show, which was hardly a surprise. When they arrived, noticed a lot of Jonin checking him out, some with pity, others with a gleam of satisfaction. Uchiha ignored the stares. During a break, Kurenai Yuhi's dad, Mabe Yuhi, came over to thank Uchiha for looking out for his daughter during the war. Uchiha wasn't like the other Uchiha, he was socially intelligent. He played up Kurenai's skills, making her blush happily. When Minato Namikaze, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and the others arrived, the Konoha Jonin vote of confidence officially got underway. The process was simple. Someone introduced Minato's background, Minato gave a campaign speech, and then everyone voted. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, personally took on the task of introducing Minato, which sent a clear message, and after Minato Namikaze finished his speech, Hiruzen Sarutobi came out to endorse him directly, making it clear where he stood. With that kind of backing, Minato Namikaze would practically have to screw up to lose the Jonin vote of confidence. The final vote showed that nearly two-thirds of the Jonin trusted Namikaze Minato to be Hokage, so he was elected by a comfortable margin. Since it was a secret ballot, people could vote their conscience. Uchiha voted against him, not because he was necessarily against Namikaze Minato becoming Hokage, but because he wanted to stick up for Orochimaru, even if Orochimaru wouldn't have cared. The Jonin vote of confidence passed, so the Hokage succession ceremony was scheduled. They snagged an auspicious day for the next day, and the Fire Country's daimyo's envoy had already arrived in Konoha. Sarutobi Hiruzen, not wanting to risk anything, decided to hold it the next day. The Hokage succession ceremony was pretty straightforward, nothing like the elaborate coronations of feudal emperors. Now that the Jonin vote was done, the new Hokage was all but confirmed. The news spread like wildfire throughout Konoha and reached the rest of the ninja world through the various powers' spy networks. In peacetime, Konoha might invite the other 4 major ninja villages and other powers to watch the ceremony, but with the war so recent, that wasn't happening. The war had just ended, and the ninja villages were still at each other's throats. Inviting them could easily cause trouble. The next morning dawned bright and clear. It was late autumn, but the sun was high and the sky was cloudless. The sun wasn't too intense, just warm and pleasant. The square below the Hokage building was packed with people, ninjas and civilians of all kinds. Police force ninjas kept order around the square, and ANBU ninjas patrolled the surrounding buildings. On the roof of the Hokage building, Namikaze Minato, Sarutobi Hiruzen, the two Hokage advisors, representatives from the administrative, medical, and education departments, the police force, the top ANBU leader, and the nine-tailed Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Kushina, were gathered. Orochimaru and Danzo were conspicuously absent. Neither of them would be caught dead at a touchy-feely event like this. Sarutobi Hiruzen offered a few words of encouragement and handed the Hokage hat over to Namikaze Minato, wearing a white, flame-patterned Hokage robe, a green Jonin vest, and blue tights. Namikaze Minato accepted the hat with both hands and solemnly promised, "I am willing to give my life." Then he walked to the edge of the roof, took off the bamboo hat, and raised his hand with a bright smile. "Oh!" A massive cheer erupted. The Konoha ninjas and villagers all looked up at the young Hokage, full of energy, and hoped that he would usher in a new era of peace and stability. If Obito hadn't stirred up trouble, Minato might have lived up to those expectations. Unfortunately, the Nine-Tails rebellion devastated Konoha's elite ninja force and the villagers, turning their dreams into a nightmare. Gen Uchiha skipped the fourth Hokage's succession ceremony and went to help Orochimaru with his experiments instead. As much as he wanted to witness Konoha's history firsthand, it was just too awkward. Transformation techniques were out of the question. They could fool regular people, but they wouldn't work on the sensory ninjas, who were far more common in Konoha than in other villages. Uchiha Gen helped Orochimaru with his experiments and research until evening. Before he left, Orochimaru slipped him 2 scrolls. Back home after dinner, Uchiha Gen opened the scrolls. One scroll described a more advanced snake ninjutsu, and the other contained the spiritual transformation technique he'd been craving. Gen Uchiha was so excited that he ignored the snake ninjutsu and dove straight into studying the spiritual transformation technique. The snake ninjutsu was just the icing on the cake, it would just add to his arsenal, but the spiritual transformation technique was a game changer. It would bring him countless benefits. The spiritual transformation technique was an S-rank soul ninjutsu. It allowed the user to transform into a living soul, travel and kill enemies from afar, control their bodies, and enter their spiritual worlds. This technique separated the spirit from the body, turning it into a spirit form that could possess an enemy, causing their spirit to collapse from within and die. Plus, the spirit form retained the user's consciousness, so it could be used for more than just possession and assassination. It could also be used for perception. Spirits could sense other people's souls. In theory, no matter how far away they were or whether the user knew their location, they could reach the other person's body after turning into a spirit form. Of course, that was just the theory. The body and soul were closely linked, they couldn't be too far apart or separated for too long, or the body could suffer brain damage. The stronger the soul, the farther the spirit form could travel and the longer it could stay away. The user could also use this ability to transmit information, confirm whether someone was alive or dead, or even provide them with chakra. Chakra was made up of spiritual and physical energy, so the soul could also be attached to chakra, though it couldn't carry as much as the body could. The only downside was that when the soul left the body became incredibly vulnerable, so vulnerable that a child could kill it. That's why it was crucial to hide the body in a safe place or have a trusted person guard it when using this technique. Chapter 70 The Art of Spiritualization, Part 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kato Dan's death in the original story likely stemmed from his hiding spot being compromised or his teammates failing to protect him. It's also possible Dan Kato engaged in combat before he could use his spiritual transformation technique, resulting in fatal injuries. However, Gen Uchiha completely negates the technique's primary weakness because he possesses the soul fruit power. Normally, one could use techniques or summons, like Zhu Rong or Wu Sheng, to guard their physical body, or even temporarily create a protected space for it. Within such a space, it's difficult for enemies to locate the body. And even if they do, breaking through the defenses to reach the physical form becomes a challenge because the guardian summons can relocate it. In other words, even against an overwhelmingly powerful opponent, the guardian summons could buy enough time for the soul to return to the body. but the best strategy involves using the soul fruit's ability to split the soul. A portion of the soul can detach from the body and operate independently, while the rest controls the physical form. This eliminates almost all risks. In the original story, Kato Dan was already deceased and without a physical body, granting him free roam of the battlefield, something impossible for living individuals, but Uchiha Gen's soul strength far surpasses that of ordinary ninjas, enabling him to cover distances a living Kato Dan couldn't dream of, and thanks to his soul-splitting ability, there's no time limit at all. He can stay out of his body indefinitely. Furthermore, Gen Uchiha can attack multiple targets simultaneously, unlike Kato Dan, who could only target one at a time. Of course, this relies on the separated soul being strong enough. Otherwise, it won't be able to attack effectively and will be vulnerable to soul damage. For Kato Dan, each use of the spiritual transformation technique was a gamble, a bet that his soul was stronger than his opponent's. There are few ways to damage souls in this world. The most common include direct physical attacks and soul devouring. Whether through physical combat or consumption, the soul suffers trauma to varying degrees. Soul wounds are notoriously difficult to heal. For example, Orochimaru's resistance to illusions has been significantly weakened after his reincarnation. The fact that Kato Dan mastered the S-rank spiritual transformation technique proves he had exceptional soul talent. His soul was stronger than most. With caution, the risk of backlash is minimized, especially when not used against famous powerhouses. The souls of those powerful figures might not be intrinsically stronger than Kato Dan's, but their immense chakra provides significant resistance to soul techniques. As long as the gap in soul strength isn't too wide, that overwhelming chakra can turn the tide. However, chakra's influence is limited. After all, half of chakra is physical power. Uchiha Gen, thanks to the soul fruit, doesn't have to worry about backlash. If he does suffer a backlash, he can absorb the souls and lifespans of others to rapidly heal the trauma. For Uchiha Gen, soul damage is no different than a physical injury. Through the soul fruit, Uchiha Gen's soul will only grow stronger, allowing him to span greater and greater distances with his spiritual transformation. Eventually, the entire ninja world will be within Uchiha Gen's reach. In his downtime, he could watch the waves crash and the clouds drift, travel to the North Sea by morning and see the sunset in the sky by evening. He could dine with the clouds, just like a primordial spirit in a cultivation novel. When his murderous intent arises, he could travel thousands of miles in an instant, eliminating targets without a trace. The headquarters of every major power in the ninja world would become practically useless against him. Not all forces possess special sensory barriers capable of preventing soul intrusions. And even those that don't keep them active constantly. They're usually only engaged during emergencies. Even if those barriers were always active, it wouldn't be difficult for Gen Uchiha to infiltrate, because spiritual transformation allows him to possess and control others. Behind the shield of a physical body, the barrier's sensitivity would be unlikely to detect anything amiss. Kato Dan could only control one person at a time, and only temporarily. But for Uchiha Gen, assuming his soul is strong enough, there's theoretically no limit. This body control ability could be further developed into a full-blown body-snatching technique, allowing him to truly become someone else. Even if Gen Uchiha doesn't pursue body-snatching, he could still acquire the reincarnation jutsu from Orochimaru. The living corpse reincarnation is, at its core, a body-snatching technique, and a highly advanced one at that. While it has limitations and isn't perfect, it allows the user to bring forward their original strength. The weaker the target soul, the more strength is transferred, potentially reaching 100%. With Orochimaru's help, he could develop a flawless living corpse reincarnation with no drawbacks. This would offer a pathway to immortality. While this immortality doesn't involve a qualitative change in one's life, it's still a guaranteed extension. Finally, the spiritual transformation technique can also assist Gen Uchiha in harvesting souls and lifespans, eliminating the need to personally travel the world. As the main soul, the split soul also has the soul fruit's abilities, albeit in a weakened form. The smaller the division, the weaker the ability, but the ability persists. It just requires more time to extract the soul and lifespan. Possession allows for soul and lifespan harvesting over time, as the physical body will inevitably reject the foreign soul. Body snatching enables continuous harvesting. As long as the host survives, the result is effectively a permanent shadow clone. The harvested souls and lifespans feed back into the main body, strengthening the spiritual transformation technique even further. In short, the spiritual transformation technique and the soul fruit perfectly complement each other, advancing together. It's a match made in heaven. No other ninjutsu, no matter how subtle or powerful, excites Uchiha Gen as much. As a result, Gen Uchiha spent nearly the entire night on the couch studying it. By morning, Uchiha Gen had a firm grasp of the principles and precautions of the spiritual transformation technique. This ninjutsu isn't particularly difficult for him. He can learn it as soon as he understands it. Acting on this, Gen Uchiha, still brimming with energy after a sleepless night, transitioned from lying down to sitting cross-legged and forming the hand seals. The chakra in his body flowed through designated pathways according to the prescribed sequence, with the precise rate and volume detailed in the scroll. A remarkable transformation occurred, and a light, cloud-like force surged down his body to the center of his forehead. The mental gateway opened, and the restraints loosened. The next moment, a transparent soul emerged from Gen Uchiha's head. This soul was much more transparent than the souls seen during the Fourth Ninja War, and its features were somewhat blurry. Despite being 99% certain, Gen Uchiha only allowed 1/3 of his soul to leave his body as a precaution. Witnessing this bizarre sight, Zhu Rong and Wu Sheng, who had been lounging around, immediately flew over, their faces filled with curiosity. Gen Uchiha controlled his soul fragment and flew out of the house, effortlessly passing through the walls, and then continued towards the neighboring house. Looking at the sleeping couple, Uchiha Gen had an idea. This ninjutsu seemed quite useful for spying. Nah, that's way too creepy. I'm not into voyeurism, but with that thought, Uchiha Gen directed his soul to pass through the roof and fly into the sky for a while. As the first rays of golden sunlight appeared in the east, Uchiha Gen recalled his soul back to his body. It may be due to the unique properties of chakra, making the soul difficult for ordinary people to see, but ninjas can. At the same time, it may also be because chakra nourishes the soul in this world, rendering it impervious to wind, rain, sunlight, and snow. Therefore, Uchiha Gen can't simply fly around indiscriminately. Furthermore, the spiritual transformation technique shouldn't be revealed casually, or people might guess how he's pulling off secret plans in the future. Checking the clock, he saw that it was 6:10 a.m. Gen Uchiha got up and went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. He didn't need to go to the police department, and Orochimaru-sensei had given him the day off to master the ninjutsu, so he could happily catch up on his sleep. Though sleep can't be fully restored, it's better to get as much as possible to maintain his health. This chapter goes a bit more in depth about the effects of spiritual transformation on the protagonist. Sorry about that.